Magic Tree House, Book Number 37, Rhinos at Recess, by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 5. Don't Move. Speedy stayed far ahead of Jack and Annie. He dashed into the thicket. "Speedy, where are you?" Annie called. The bush baby croaked from inside the bushes. "Come out from there," said Annie. She tried pushing through the closely packed shrubs. "Ow! Ow!" Annie cried, jumping back. She rubbed her arms. "That really hurt." "No wonder," said Jack. "Look." Jutting out between the feathery leaves of the bushes were dagger-like thorns. Each spike was 3 or 4 inches long. "Yikes," said Annie. "We can't go in there," said Jack. "We'll get stabbed to death." "But what about Speedy?" said Annie. "I don't know," said Jack. "Maybe he'll—" "Shh, listen," said Annie. Jack held his breath. Loud snuffling and snorting noises came from the thorn bushes. "That doesn't sound like Speedy," Annie said. Jack shook his head. "It's not Speedy," he said. "So what is it?" whispered Annie. The snuffling and snorting grew louder. Annie carefully tried to pull back a thorny branch. Jack grabbed her arm. "Don't," he whispered. "Something's hiding in there. Something way bigger than a bush baby." "Like what?" whispered Annie. "I don't know," whispered Jack. "Just back up, slowly, one step at a time." "But Speedy," started Annie. "Now," Jack whispered. The two of them carefully stepped back. A growling sound came from the bushes. Jack's heart pounded as he looked around. They could run down the dirt road or across the grassy plain. But a hungry animal could chase them and catch them. His eyes rested on a tree near the bushes. Beneath the leafy top were bare branches. "Let's climb that tree," he said. "We can wait there till the safari ride comes back." "What about Speedy?" said Annie. "We'll figure that out once we're safe," said Jack. The bushes started to shake. Jack heard twigs and branches snap. "Go now," said Jack. Jack and Annie dashed the tree. "Hurry," Jack said. Annie grabbed a limb and pulled herself up. Jack followed, lifting himself onto a branch near her. As he tried to climb higher, his hand was stuck by thorns. "Ouch!" he cried. "Are you okay?" Annie said. "Watch out! There are thorns here too. They're near the top," Jack said. Jack and Annie settled on bare branches just below the crown of the tree. "Look," said Annie. A huge head emerged from the thicket. The head had upright ears and a long horn growing from its snout. "Oh man," Jack whispered. "A rhino," said Annie. The rhino grunted and lumbered out from the bushes. Its wide, bulky body was covered with wrinkled, dark gray skin. "A real rhino," Annie said. "Rhinos are dangerous, don't forget," said Jack. "Where's Speedy?" said Annie. "Shh, don't call out to him," Jack whispered. "Remember, Jomo said a rhino can crush you or stab you." The rhino moved forward on thick, heavy legs. It swung its head from side to side. Jack held his breath, afraid the animal might see them. "Don't move," he whispered. "Rhinos can't see well," Annie said softly. "They rely on hearing and smell." "Then don't talk," whispered Jack. "But do you think Speedy's safe?" Annie whispered. "Shh, quiet." The rhino turned its gaze in their direction. It twitched its ears as if trying to hear them. It snorted as if trying to smell them. Can a rhino knock down a tree? Jack wondered. Is a rhino the danger in Morgan's rhyme? Jack quietly pulled Morgan's note from his back pocket. He read to himself. Use magic just once. Save life old and new. To chase away danger, here's what to do. Find a paper tree with roots at the top. Point to the giant. Say, please make them stop. The words still made no sense. The tree they had climbed was definitely not a paper tree. And who were the giant and them? He put the rhyme back into his pocket. The rhino turned its head. It sniffed the air. Listen, I hear Speedy, Annie whispered. Jack heard jabbering coming from the brush. Suddenly the thorn bushes parted, and out came Speedy. He was riding on the back of a baby rhino. Chapter 6. Code Red. Speedy, Annie whispered loudly. Speedy looked up at the tree where Jack and Annie were hiding. He jumped off the rhino calf and leapt to the tree. He scuttled up to them. You're safe, Annie whispered, hugging the bush baby. Speedy jabbered excitedly. I know, a baby rhino. It's so sweet, Annie said to him. Not so loud, whispered Jack. That big rhino must be Rosie. The little one is her calf. I know, said Annie. The baby rhino was only about 2 feet tall. She hadn't grown a horn yet, but she looked just like her mother. She had wrinkled dark gray skin, a large head, and upright ears. She's a miniature Rosie. A Rosita, said Annie. A what? Whispered Jack. Rosita. It means little rose in Spanish, said Annie. Shh, Rosie's coming back, whispered Jack. Remember, a mother rhino can be dangerous. The mother rhino walked over to her calf and nuzzled her. Then she lay down in the grass on her side. Oh yeah, she's so dangerous, Annie said, grinning. Seriously, Jack said, we have to stay in the tree. While Rosie rested, her calf climbed halfway onto her back. The baby pawed her mother as if trying to get her to play. Annie giggled softly, and Jack couldn't help grinning. A baby rhino must be the cutest animal in the world, he thought. Rosie finally grunted and heaved herself up. She ate some grass. Then she began moving away from the trees. The cow followed her on stumpy little legs. The 2 rhinos rounded the cluster of bushes. Jack and Annie couldn't see them anymore. Now we have to climb down, said Annie, so we can check them and tell the rangers where they are. Okay, said Jack, but we have to stay far away from them. Remember, rhinos can move fast. Don't let her see you. And Speedy, he spoke sternly to the bush baby, don't talk. Speedy swiveled his head and looked at Annie. Just whisper, she said. Come on. Speedy hopped onto Annie's back. He put his little arms around her neck. Annie carefully climbed down from the tree. Jack followed. They crept over the grass and rounded the thorny thicket. They stood at a safe distance and watched the 2 rhinos. Rosie and her calf had ambled down to the creek. They both sank into the muddy water. Jack and Annie watched the rhinos wallow in the mud. Wildebeests grazed in the distance. Zebras roamed the tall grass. Overhead, birds with long, slender wings swooped through the blue sky. It was a perfect scene, Jack thought. Beautiful and peaceful. All the creatures were doing what they were born to do. Look at that, said Annie, pointing at the sky. Is that a bird? Jack squinted in the sunlight. He saw something in the distance, flying toward them. Speedy started jabbering wildly. That's not a bird, said Jack. A small plane? Said Annie. As the thing in the sky drew closer, they could hear whapping and chopping sounds. Jack felt sick. It's not a plane, he said. What then? Said Annie. A helicopter, said Jack. A chopper. Oh no! Poachers! Cried Annie. Code red! Yes, said Jack. This must be the chopper that Jomo and Shani were after. Speedy whistled and shrieked. Rosie, we have to save her, said Annie. I know, said Jack. How? Annie said. Get her to a hiding place, said Jack. In the thorn bushes? Said Annie. Better if we get them under that tree we were in, said Jack. The leaves might keep them from being seen from the sky. How do we do that? Cried Annie. I don't know, said Jack. Wait, said Annie. What if we yell at Rosie's baby? We make Rosie mad at us. She chases us. We run. Her baby follows. We can't outrun a rhino, said Jack. You said they can run 30 miles an hour. We'll get a head start, said Annie, and we'll lead Rosie and her baby back to our tree. Let's do it. The terrible chopper noise was growing louder. Jack, it's the only plan we've got, said Annie. Jack looked from the tree to the helicopter to the rhino. Right, okay, he said. Let's go.